All right, welcome. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk today about creating a behavioral policy statement. So I run something called the Behavioral Finance Network, which creates tools and applications for advisors to actually apply behavioral finance in their practice. And so this is one of the tools. We're going to talk about conceptually how you do it and then some ideas. And I hope that it's somewhat interactive, because I'd love to get some ideas from you. I think of this as kind of a brainstorming or a groupthink where we can help each other. And for those that want to jot down some notes, you'll walk away from here and have 80% of a behavioral policy statement done and ready to implement in your business. So the first question we have to ask is a behavioral policy statement even necessary? And Michael Kitces said that the future of financial planning is not about dispensing expert financial advice, but helping clients engage in financial behavior change. That is something that we're trying to do right now. How do you actually influence client decisions? That's tough. When we think about our industry, there's so many things that change. What we need to do is we need to think about what are the things that don't change? Because that's worthy of our time, effort, our investment. The things that don't change, certainly human behavior is one of those. Because we all have the same brain. It's how we're hardwired, these biases that we have within us. So how do we help investors recognize who we are as irrational beings and then make more rational decisions in line with our financial plan? So that's what we're going to talk about today. When we look at behavior, one thing to think about is how much it impacts our decisions. So here's a question for you. I do want some answers. Of economic decisions, so we're talking about financial decisions, investment decisions, what percentage of those decisions do you think are influenced by psychological factors, and what percent would you say are influenced more by rationality and logic? 80-20? 90-10? Any others? Do we generally agree? So we found our sacrificial lambs for today. So we'll go here for our answers today. So thank you for participating. I've been speaking to, at least 20,000 advisors throughout the years, and this is a common question I ask. The top two answers are 80-20, 90-10. And which side is it? I don't want to presume, but which side is higher of the two? Psychological, right? So I put down 85-15 as that's what I am seeing as an average. Now, we can debate what that actually is. I've never heard anybody say less than 50-50, though. It's always higher on the psychological side. So we all agree that that's the case. Now, think about the financial tools you're using right now today. What percentage of those are psychological based, and what percent are rational and logic? The mental shortcut is simply flip the numbers that you see up there. But then if you did that, I'd say, well, what are the 15% psychological tools, right? We could debate about that. But the realization here is that this industry does not acknowledge investors as human beings. They recognize them as rational agents, which means that they are not influenced by emotions and they do not make any cognitive errors. Okay, that's not what we're dealing with. And by the way, just about all the tools we have, optimizers, risk profilers, just about everything we have assumes rational individuals. It doesn't mean we throw them out, but what it does is it tells us how necessary it is to add in more of this psychological behavioral component so we can better understand our clients and therefore better help them. This really comes down to not just helping investors make better financial decisions, it's about improving the client experience. In technology, they spend millions and millions of dollars talking about the user experience. And they do lots of tests, A/B tests, left and right, to figure out what is better for the end user. There is no talk about the user, which is the investor experience in our industry. This is all about not just helping them make a better decision, but a better overall experience, meaning they're less anxious throughout the entire process. They're feeling less fear because you're helping them with proactive, timely perspectives and also helping them with expectations and just preparing them for what's coming. And that is the purpose behind the behavioral policy statement. It really comes down to, when you create it, just think about what's my best advice. And the way I like to think about it is that let's say you're old. Let's talk about your death right now. You're on your deathbed, and a grandchild comes up to you and says, Grandma, Grandpa, you've been an advisor for all of these years. I'm starting to invest now. Give me your best advice. How can I be a successful investor? What comes into your mind? And I'm going to ask you a little bit later maybe to share a few of these. But that is really what this is about, is what is your best advice, behaviorally speaking, to help investors make better decisions? What would you say to a family member is the exact same thing you would say to your client. So in the behavioral policy statement I've created, I've kind of nailed it down to 3 main areas. One is an area just on basic behavioral advice. And so one of the things that I think is very important is that we focus on things we can control. Now think about this. When you're having a review with a client or a phone call with a client, what types of questions are they asking you typically? What's the stock market going to do? And this guy right here knows what the stock market's going to do, right? Because that's why they're asking him, right? What's the stock market going to do? Who's going to win the election? What's going to happen if Harris wins? What's going to happen if Trump wins? When's the next recession coming? Investors are focused on things that we cannot control nor can we predict. They spend a lot of time and energy on that. And guess what? If you answer those questions, you're pandering to them. You are actually encouraging them to keep asking those questions. So instead, what we can do is say, hey, we're going to focus on things we can control. So a few things that we know we can control are asset allocation. We can control attention allocation. Think about attention allocation. That's where we're choosing to spend our time. Are investors sitting in front of the TV? Are they consuming that awful media that's always trying to lead them astray? Or are they actually trusting the plan and enjoying life? Oftentimes, it's the former, not the latter. Other things they can control include their budget, right? Spending versus savings. So these are the types of things that helps to be in this type of document. When we work with clients, we put together a plan, portfolio strategy, and then we get upset when they want to go, when they ask questions about doing something else. What we don't do is we don't do a really good job of preparing the client for how they're supposed to behave. We may be their financial advisor, but we're not like their personal trainer. What we do is akin to dropping a high school kid off at the gym that wants to go out for the football team, never lifted weights before, but they're going to the gym to lift weights, and when they say, hey, Mom, Dad, how do I lift weights? We say, just look at what everybody else does and follow them. Right? You know they'll get injured day one if they do that. If we don't help our clients understand what they're about to expect, what they're about to go through, and then help them and actually coach them along with proper ways to think about things, then we are basically waiting for them to just fall into these pits that they have been falling into for decade after decade after decade, and will continue to happen unless we put together the correct defenses. And that's what the behavioral policy statement does, is it creates that systematic defense mechanism because you're sharing your best advice with them. So point number 2 is, for a behavioral policy statement, it's important that we manage expectations. Everybody has expectations. They come in, and they're generally unset expectations. But I'll tell you what a lot of expectations investors have of you. If they're paying you 1%, they're expecting you to beat the market. They're expecting you to know when the market's about to underperform and keep them safe ahead of time. Their expectations are out of whack oftentimes. So what expectations should they have? And let me ask you, see if there's anybody that wants to share, what expectation do you want your investors to have? Any ideas? And then I'll share one of my ideas with you. What's that? That the advisor will call you when there's a problem, meaning if we don't contact you, everything's okay. Excellent. Any other ideas? No? All right, we'll go on. Here's one that I have here, and that is you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, at some point in time are going to be sorely tempted to abandon your plan. And the reason is because there's always something better out there. There's always something performing better. Whether it's like right now, it's kind of like NVIDIA, before it was crypto, and then guess what? When the market turns over, it's going to be cash and bonds, meaning in a well-diversified portfolio, we are always leaving something on the table. This needs, in some way, needs to be said to clients, because guess what's going to happen? When they go throughout and they're talking to their friends, they're reading the journal, they're watching CNBC, and all of a sudden they're realizing, hey, I'm not doing as well as these other investments are. Then they're like, well, I got to talk to my advisor about this. We got to make some changes. Because to them, they're thinking, this is a revelation to my mind. That my plan is not good. We need to change the plan. They're going to be tempted by this. It's much better to tell them right up front. And then if they call you with that, just say, oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Do you remember when we talked about this, that you're going to have these feelings? It's OK. That's part of our process. Because what happens is that underperformance becomes a threat to the investor. All of a sudden, they feel threatened that they're not going to reach their goals, or certainly not as quickly as they would like. So this is like a sample expectation that I really like, that I feel is very, very important to share with investors. And then point number 3 is teach them investment truths. There are a lot of what I call durable or enduring investment truths that we can talk to investors about. And one that I like the best is the media. The media informs, right? The people tune into the media to be informed. If you ask your clients, why do you tune into the financial media? They'll tell you, the only good answer is to be informed. But the thing is what does it inform you of? And these are conversations we want to have, because we got to bring it to the forefront of their mind so that they understand this. Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you understand that while the media provides information, their role is not to help you make good decisions? That is not their role. Their role is to make money. That's their job. And do you know what they need in order to make money? What do you guys think? How would you answer that? Attention, right? They need your eyeballs. Mr. and Mrs. Client, the financial media exists to get you to tune in today and to get you to tune in tomorrow. They don't know you, and they don't know your plan. And this is very important, because you're going to say, but they use psychological factors because they have to get you to tune in now and come back tomorrow, because if they don't sell ads, they don't make money. Really, if the financial media really had the investor's best interest at heart, they would come on with a program and maybe they'd give them a fact, like the market was down or up X% this day, and then they should say, and you shouldn't care, now enjoy the next 59 minutes of cat videos, right? That would be much more effective, because then the person wouldn't care and they would actually have joy in their life instead of the constant anxiety and fear, whether it's fear of loss or fear of missing out, that the media is constantly doing that. So investors tune in because they feel like I'm being irresponsible if I'm not informed. But we want to make sure that investors know what they're being informed of. It's all short-term garbage that has a half-life of a day, if that. And we need them to be focused on their plan. So those types of things, and just coming out and teaching them those truths, they're aha moments. I have given presentations to over 15,000 individual investors over the years, and this is a point that I make with them. Every single time, they're like, and then oftentimes I've heard afterwards, they'll come up to me and they're like, I'm never going to watch that again. And you know that probably lasts like 2 days, right? They get the idea, the aha moment is made, but you still have the temptation to go back. These are very, very difficult, because they're working on our unconscious biases. So those are like the 3 stages of the behavioral policy statement. Some good behavioral advice, expectations, and then, I already forgot, teach them truths. So actually, when it comes to, okay, so I've got some ideas down, how do I implement this? What I recommend is actually putting it kind of like in a bullet point form. And the reason I recommend that is because it requires you to actually think and create concise statements with it. And it also is something that becomes repeatable. So that way you can make sure that every client is having the same message. I know it's happened to me where you sit down with a client and you're like, gosh, I've shared this idea with 80% of my clients. I don't remember if I shared it with this one. Or you assume that you did and then you didn't. So it helps make sure that your coaching to your clients is consistent. And if you have a multi-advisor office, it makes sure that no matter who your client is working with, they're getting the same core messages. So that's the idea, that's my thoughts behind why something like this may be helpful as you create yours. And when it comes time to actually presenting it to the clients, there's two main ways to do it. One, you can treat this like an investment policy statement, where you simply review it with them up front, talk about each one, and then you review it at every meeting that you have with them. Or if your business structure is not that structured, I should say, then you could simply take a point in there and then highlight it in like your monthly campaign to your clients, your monthly communication to clients. Maybe just take one of them and focus on it, and then every month you flip to the next one. The bottom line is whatever works for your business, we always should be coaching. So ABC, always be coaching. Sometimes we get the idea that if you share a great idea and the client gets an aha moment like, oh my gosh, that's great, I'm never going to do it again, please understand they will do it 2 to 3 days later. Because it's just, thinking, the way we think and the way we respond to situations is a habit. And habits are very, very hard to change. So what you're going to do by consistently coaching these messages, consistently reviewing it with them, is you're going to, over time, change the way they respond to situations and help them create better thought habits and better response habits, which results in better investment decisions and a better overall client experience because they're no longer worried about every single move that's out there because you've already taught them how to filter that out and what to focus on. So if we got a few minutes if there are any questions. Additionally, if you'd like to continue talking, if you want to know what other behavioral finance tools are out there or things that you might want to consider, give me a call or shoot me a text there and we can have a conversation. Well, thank you all so much. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your conference.